Hello readers, and welcome to Shelf Help. We pick back up where Shadow and the Ember left off, mid-conversation with Holland, with Niktos bowing before Syrah as the true primal of life. You are the heir to the lands and seas, skies and realms, a queen instead of a king. You are the primal of life. What was it the prophecy said again? Oh yes. Noteworthy is that Holland does not bow. I wonder if he will bow to Poppy. A lot of the first pages are devoted to As You Know, where characters recount events from the last book to each other, which is very helpful if it's been a hot minute since you read the last book, but also a bit tedious if you're reading them back to back. It gets back to the story with Holland giving more lessons in fate. Maintaining the balance isn't always as simple to understand as it is when, say, Primal of Life restores a mortal's life, his eyes fixed on mine, hard, all-seeing. Another's life must be forsaken in their place. I sucked in a sharp breath, my stomach hollowing. The night I brought Lady Marisol back to life, my stepfather, the king of Lycia, died in his sleep. I hadn't even considered that it had anything to do with my actions. Good gods, I killed my stepfather. It was not intentional, Holland said. But it was her time. You intervened, upset the balance, and it had to be righted. By whom? I demanded. Who decided how balance is restored? Holland looked at me. I stiffened. You? Not him, Niktos answered. The Ari in general. They're like cosmic cleaners. One aspect I love about Armentrout's writing is her subtlety. This is such a powerful moment upon reread. Knowing who Holland is and what he's up to and why really gives it perspective. What does he say here? Syrah is the closest thing he has had to a child in Fates knows how many millennia, if ever. He probably doesn't want to lie to her face. In fact, the Fates seem to operate on Fae rules. It's possible Holland can't lie. So he says nothing. Because the truth is horrifying. The Embers of Life are the most important MacGuffin in play right now. Because without them, everything goes sideways. They must be saved at any cost. Second, in order for Ethos's plan to raise a primal of life and death to work, first you must get life and death to make a baby. And Niktos has let the last 3 years slip past, trying to do the right thing. Bless his soul. If Holland did not set up Marisol to die just so Syrah would save her, he absolutely took the opportunity to kill her stepfather, making Tavius king. With his ability to see the strings of fate, Holland knew Tavius would wake up and choose violence. What it would mean for Syrah, what would happen to her, how Niktos would respond. I don't know if Niktos is protecting Syrah's feelings here or not, but Holland definitely did a murder. And if Niktos ever puts 2 and 2 together, we are going to find out if he can kill a Fate. With the release of Born of Blood and Ash, we now know that the Fates do not act as one. They're individuals with different ideas about the world and the prophecy. There are at least 2 factions in play here. And with the first chapter of Primal of Blood and Bone released in November, link in the description, we also know about the Dreamers. Ancients who foresaw the end even before the first Primal was created. They are desperate to keep the balance. The important part here is that the Fates aren't without their own set of rules. Their actions or inactions must work towards keeping the balance, or they cease to exist. So what Holland is doing is apparently in agreement with those rules. Holland could have picked anyone in the world, but he chose to kill the king and force Niktas's hand. No direct intervention. Anyway, back to the story. The conversation slides back to the Embers and Satoria. I'm giving the whole conversation 3 points because she keeps popping up. Penelope picks up the Satoria stick again and pokes Niktas with it, reminding him what Kalus will do to have his Gracia back. Niktas insists that he can and will protect Syrah. Again, Syrah, not the Embers. Syrah worries Kalus will just kill Niktas, but Holland pipes up again. No, he cannot, Holland interrupted. My head swung toward him. As I've said, there must always be balance in everything, even among primals. Life cannot exist without death, and they should not be one and the same. You mean like a primal of life and death? Is that possible? Because you said should not. You didn't say could not. The fun thing about splitting the book mid-conversation is that it's easy to forget they were talking about the prophecy moments ago. A prophecy that includes the line, "For finally the primal rises, giver of blood and the bringer of bone, the primal of blood and ash." Blood is a symbol of life in this series, and ash often is a synonym for death. It's literally calling for a primal of life and death. Of course, this is all Greek myth-themed, so we must protest too much. But go ahead and ask Oedipus his thoughts on prophecy and fate and how to avoid both. Then we have the Kalus problem. Until Born of Blood and Ash, it was a question that hung like a pendulum over everyone's head. I mean, obviously the answer is the primal of blood and bone, aka Poppy, what's needed to end him. But statements like this from Holland make it seem like everyone from the Fates down was against the idea of a primal of both life and death. Some, like a Fate named Aiden, who we will meet later, don't even consider it a possibility. And yet Holland's every action going forward indicate Ethos gave him a plan to follow to create the ultimate primal. What he means to say is that such a thing, a primal of both life and death, is not meant to exist, Niktas says. It would be unthinkable for the embers of both to thrive in one being. But if they could, he gave a short laugh with a raise of his dark brows. The kind of power they'd wield, it would be truly absolute. They could unravel the realms in the same breath they created a new one. There'd be no stopping such a being, Holland added. There could be no balance. Therefore, the Fates ensured long ago that such power must be split, and that an absence of either ember would cause the collapse of all the realms. I think he's referring to Ethos and Kalos were born as twins, giving each one ember instead of both. Which means the plan to keep the embers apart in primals lasted only 3 generations. Granted, that is untold millennia, but still. What does Kalus even want? What is his goal with these creations of his?
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Which isn't that far off. He wants absolute rule over Elysium and the mortal world, to which Sarah points out mortals would fight back, even the most devout. It would leave him with nothing but a kingdom of bones. I'm reminded of the quote attributed to Sun Tzu. An evil man will burn his nation to the ground to rule over the ashes. How long does the mortal world have? I swallowed thickly. After I die. You won't die, Niktas stated as if he had the authority to make such a claim. He didn't. She will, Holland said quietly. She will die without the love of the one who ascends her. A love that cannot be ignored. A love that must be acknowledged. He looked at Niktos. And you have. We heard you the first time, I snapped, as the primal thrust a hand through his hair. But you haven't, Holland returned. You haven't heard why he cannot save you as he is now. He tilted his head to Niktos. Has she, Your Highness? Just call him a dumbass, Holland. That is, what, the 3rd or 4th 100th time Holland has told him to accept his feelings? And thus we come to my personal least favorite plot point. Niktos had a piece of his soul removed, specifically the cardia, the part that lets him feel eros, romantic love. I know this series is about teasing out foreshadowing, but I need to get out my reviewer's soapbox for a moment. The problem with this plot point is that it goes nowhere. It functions purely as a broken bridge to keep the characters from moving forward so other plot stuff can happen. The characters never take actions to attempt to fix his soul, because it doesn't need to be fixed. It already grew back, which would still work if they did anything towards trying to solve the problem. When Niktos is talking to Sira as she goes through her ascension, he tells her how he thinks it grew back when they kissed at the very beginning of the story. When he ripped open the realms to kick Tavius in the teeth, Scion mentions he'd been moody lately. Holland has spent this whole conversation using words like accept and acknowledge while watching Niktos gently brush against Sira and lose his chill at the mention something bad might hypothetically happen to her. And I get why it is here. Important plot stuff has to happen before the primal can rise. We can't have them saying the L word too soon. But it could have been done better with Niktos dealing with his own insecurities and wondering if he really loved her enough. Sira could have worried about losing her agency, becoming a vampire or a Demis, since she isn't a second-born. This could have all been made better by a small subplot trying to restore his soul. Also, Niktos not being a for no good reason would have been nice. Instead, we get to slog through consort in name only and I will never love you, despite a literal fate telling them to cut the and accept their feelings or the world ends. There are chunks of this story that only work because these two play with the idiot ball. Ahem. Back to the story. And Victor Ward makes his appearance. Hi, Victor. He's a Victor. Victors are Victors because Victor was the first Victor. And of course, Victor was Poppy's Victor, which Padre's reread turns out to be rather tragic. But we'll get back to that. For now, he is putting a ward on Sira so she can't be taken against her will, while Holland stands looking at the opposite wall so he can truthfully say he saw nothing. The fates are functionally just fae. Just to hammer the point home, Holland tells Sira on the way out that she is his weakness, without specifying who that refers to. Then we get another battle. It's a really nice battle scene, but maybe I'm biased because it's Draken heavy? A Draken of unknown loyalties is setting fire to the redwoods, releasing entombed gods. We don't see the results of this until near the end of Blood and Ash, but I feel like it will be important for Primal of Blood and Bone as well. Also, Niktos rips a god in half vertically, which is just awesome. There's also a moment where Sira has a chance to bring a Draken back, which would have fulfilled another part of the prophecy, but she bypasses it. Not to worry, the prophecy will not be denied. There is a reason the Fates hate prophecy. After the first of many conversations where Sira makes an excellent point that being kept safe as the consort is really rather pointless when she will die anyway in a few months and take the world with her, she sneaks off to kill the king. Over the balcony and through the woods to Colos's house she goes. The woods smell like stale lilacs and she sees a hawk. The hawk is large enough to carry off a child, or even a slender adult, which is extremely large. The world's largest eagle is the stellar sea eagle, but the harpy can lift the most, carrying off about 40 pounds. So, more like this size. But the bird's eyes are very, very blue instead of black, because he's very, very special, and he helps her by attacking a shade. Then she is attacked by shades, which are mortals who were afraid to be judged by the pillars, and so now wander the dying woods as hungry shadows. And then from death, life. There was no will, no demand, but I felt the ether in my blood building and building. I tried to stop it, but the silvery glow spilled out from my palms, beating back the shade's shadow, peeling back the layers of dull gray. A ribcage and spine and dry, withered organs. A withered heart that was a flat, gray color. A heart that suddenly beat. The color deepened to a bright red as pinkish-white tendons and muscles rapidly formed around the ribs and bones. Veins appeared throughout, where nothing but gray had once been. A skull took shape, tendons wrapping around the jawbone, straightening a mouth full of crooked teeth. Lips began to take shape, turning a pale pink as they moved, and a throat that was barely put together vibrated with sound. Mia, it rasped, Lycia. Which is delightfully creepy, and very important later. Luckily, Sarah is saved from creating a terrifying abominations that the Fates would definitely frown on by Niktos' timely arrival, who ends the brief second life of the shade by blowing it up like a silver-filled party favor. Also, Hawkboy makes his exit before Death notices him. Raising the dead to do her bidding is one of Sarah's favorite party tricks. They aren't alive any more than the Gyrims are. I wonder when she finds out they're still full of snakes. After some arguing, Niktos retrieves her back to the palace, and they get some rest. And the next morning, Sarah once again notices the white pedestal. I didn't note this in my last videos because it didn't seem important, even though it had been mentioned. I'm gonna say 3 times in the first book. I still don't know why it's important, but it gets a lot of mentions in Born of Blood and Ash. So it gets a count. So you don't point to a random part of a setting that much without it being important. Sarah also has a conversation with Nektis while they wait for Niktos. How much do you know about what Ethos did? Everything. Then you know I wasn't being foolish last night. If I could make it to Kalos, I could be successful. Maybe. But at what cost? Does the price matter when we're talking about stopping Kalos? The price should always matter when it comes at the cost of a life. The crack that had formed trembled deep in my chest. But that's a price I will pay either way. You don't know that. And then on the next page, Nektis gave a small grin at that. Death is not a foregone conclusion. Once again, asking a few questions would help here. This is what I mean when I say these two have to play with the idiot ball to make this book work. Not being able to question Holland is one thing. He's an eldritch horror from beyond the stars, bound by Fae rules. He gets to be cryptic and take no questions. But Nektos isn't in the same boat. He's the first Draken Ethos made from the dragon. And the ancients only know how old he was as a dragon before that. He is old and wise and has seen a lot. He chose to serve Niktos over Kalos at great personal cost. He doesn't have a reason to be cryptic. There's no reason that Sarah or Niktos could not ask him a follow-up question. He could still answer that he was sworn to secrecy, but the fact that they never asked bugs me. When ethos was the true primal of life, ascended the chosen, they became the same as godlings, because the ether being stronger in thirdborns. None had ever ascended into an actual god, not even in the hundreds of years of the chosen being ascended. But none had primal embers in them either. Anything is possible with you. The fun thing about a reread is finding things you either missed or forgot. This is one of those things for me. Somewhere along the way, I assumed the chosen, ascended by the true primal of life, became gods, which may punch a bit of a hole in my Atlantia was founded by the ascended chosen theory. Whoops. Just a little question mark on that one. Yay, theories! Anyway, they need to find Delphi, who is a person, not a location. But he's been in hiding since Colossus' ride. But to find him, they need to consult the pools of Divinesh, a scrying pool that can locate people or objects for a price. Nyktos had it moved into the Veil, where Kalas can no longer reach it and use it to search for Satoria, which is a delightful double bird to Kalas. So time for a fetch quest. But first, she must become consort, so Nyktos can protect her even against other primals. And so I don't turn this into another monster video, I'm going to cut here. Thank you for your time, and let me know how I can improve your shelf.